am so happy to be here with you guys. Thank you for your patience, and for everyone who is watching. I very much appreciate that you are here, and I am sorry for all the tech, but that is 2020, right? And in fact, one of the things that I want to talk about today is what teaching looks like in 2020 from four teachers who are like really living it. So before we get started, I'm Elicia. I'm the Director of Training for the Comprehensible Classroom, and I am currently teaching graduate school virtually. Before we do anything else, though, I just want to remind any of our viewers of our conversational norms, because we might be talking about things that make you feel uncomfortable. That is not our intention in any way, shape, or form. We want to have a productive conversation, and we also want our comments to be productive. So please be kind to all of us and each other, because the world's kind of mean right now. Let's just make it a more lovely place. Let's refrain from blame and shame, period. We're all learning. Let's be willing to try on new ideas. Let's ask questions that are related to the topic, and let's help each other find the answers. The topic today is, what does equitable engagement look like in fall of 2020? So with that, I'd like to ask our colleagues to introduce themselves. Do you want to start, John?
Sure. Yeah, I'm John Bracey. I'm a Latin teacher in Massachusetts. I've been at this for about 10 years, and I am currently in a fully remote setting, hopefully for as long as possible, knock on wood, but I'm teaching high school fully remote right now.
Awesome. And how about you, Meredith?
I was gonna say, I'm jealous. First of all, we are hybrid. I'm in Gwinnett County. My name is Meredith White, and I teach Spanish 1 and 2. Hybrid, wish it was goodbye-brid, because I'm kind of over the roomies and the zoomies simultaneously. It's a lot, but you know, we're doing the best we can.
Sorry, did you just say the roomies and the zoomies?
Yeah, those are my people, the roomies and the zoomies.
Oh, that's awesome.
we're about 25% of our school is a roomie, and about 75% is a zoomie. So you've got anywhere from 20 to 30 kids on Zoom and like 5 to 8 in front of you. And I think Bob's joining us, and he's also in Gwinnett County, so he and I have the same situation, but his percentages might be different. He might have more roomies or more zoomies. I don't know.
Right. And we're also waiting for Diana Castro and Bob Patrick to join in. We've had, as you probably noticed, all of these very exciting tech problems. But while we're getting started, let's start with something nice. What happened that worked today? What's something that worked? What was a positive interaction that you had today with kiddos?
Get it? Hey, there we go.
Hey.
Are we allowed to say something yesterday? Mine
Yes.
wasn't today. Today was a little rough. But yesterday was good. I had joked, a student came onto the Zoom, and so a roomie turned zoomie and came onto the Zoom, and I was like, oh, you must be home today. Like, that's weird. I don't really think we could do that, but you did it. So here we are. And he said, oh, I'll be there in a second. I'm on my way, but I'm gonna stop by Starbucks. Fair. Like, yeah. And I was like, oh, I wouldn't hate a Frappuccino, like kidding around. He walked in with an extra drink for me. And it was just like super nice, because I haven't really met the zoomies, and I think the roomies are confused, and we just don't hear thank you enough anyway. And I was just like, oh my gosh, I was kidding, but also thank you.
That's really nice. Bob, would you take a moment and introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Bob Patrick.
And where do you teach? What do you teach? What's your story, man?
Yeah, so I teach at Parkview High School, which is a very, very large high school in Gwinnett County Public Schools, the same as Meredith. I think we have about 3,200 students in our 9 through 12 high school. I teach Latin in a program that's entirely comprehensible input. There are 6 of us who teach Latin. We have about 800 Latin students. So we teach about a quarter of the school. This program's been growing in this direction for the last 15 years. and it's just amazing and delightful and wonderful. We have our program is a cross section of the school. There's not anybody who wants to be in Latin who can't be in Latin. So I don't know what else to say, but that's where we are. This is my 31st year of teaching, so I've been at this a while.
Wow. So right now I've been spending my time primarily as a teacher educator, working with in-service and pre-service teachers. And the number one question that I've gotten is what's really led me to bringing you guys together. And that is, what does engagement look like and what is our responsibility? So what does it look like in terms of cameras on? What does it look like in terms of accountability, which is a word that I'm questioning the use of now. And what responsibility do we as teachers have to hold every student engaged? So what are your thoughts on that?
Wow.
Easy.
Okay.
So but I think part of it, and I don't know if I missed this coming in late, but you know, what our current circumstances is, Meredith and I are probably in similar circumstances. And that is that we have, at least at my school, we have about 30% of our students in the building and 70% of our students at home. And so we're teaching to students in the classroom as well as through either Google Classroom Live or Zoom every day in lots of different fashions. So that's my circumstance. I just want to respond to the word responsibility. I have training that goes way back into liberal religious seminary, and this is where I learned from H. Richard Niebuhr. He's a liberal Protestant theologian from the 60s and 70s. That responsibility really means the ability to respond to the current circumstances, which is not at all the way educators use the word in schools. The traditional way of using the word responsibility is for teachers to say to students, you will do what I tell you to do, or you will suffer the consequences. And that's the difference between responsibility and irresponsibility. Responsible students do what I tell them to do, and irresponsible students don't. But if you think of responsibility as the ability, the power, the capability of responding to the circumstances, that changes everything. And oh my goodness, how the hell our circumstances have been changed this year. And so what is responsible is it's a whiteboard, and we have to start all over, because responding every day to what is in front of us is changing. And teachers who have bells and have rooms and have rules are not accustomed to that.
Amen. I'd like to welcome Diana. Diana, thank you for joining us. We're so happy. We were really sad that Diana wasn't going to be able to make it, but because of all the tech problems, she's here. So yay. Diana, will you take a moment and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about where you teach?
Hi, I'm Diana Castro, and I teach Spanish and French in Lakewood, California. I live in Long Beach.
Are you face-to-face? Are you hybrid? What is your teaching scenario?
I'm teaching from my living room this entire semester until January 28th.
Wow.
And I had the option of going to school and teaching online from school, but I just decided to stay home.
Nice.
Yes, it's definitely been challenging. I miss the kids' interaction, the face-to-face with the kids, but we're trying to do the best we can with what we have.
Awesome. So what are you all thinking? I love how you're reframing, Bob, that it is a response. One of the concerns that I hear teachers, like they're breaking, I'm breaking because we can't see our kids.
Yep.
And we don't know if they're present or not, right?
Yep.
And yet, I feel like, well, it's my job to like engage every kid and check on them and make sure they're okay. And also, if one more thing is put on my plate, I'm going to explode. And if I have to have one more difficult email conversation with a family, I might not be able to do it. And I want to recognize where teachers are at, because I feel like that's really happening.
Mm-hmm.
So where is that line for us?
I could throw down on that one.
Please.
So from my perspective, like, well, let's start with step one here. We're in the middle of an enormous pandemic that is raging, surging, is not going backwards. It's just going nuts.
Yep.
It's just going off the charts right now. So for all intents and purposes, the building's on fire. So right now, everything that happens, like imagine we're like the house is on fire. We're in the backyard. We put up a tent and we're doing our best to tell stories and to reassure the kids that everything is going to be okay and be a calming presence for them. Now, not everybody is gonna be like, well, like I would like to go through our normal bedtime routine and I normally watch an episode of a show. So how are we gonna make that happen? Like not everybody is looking for it to be normal. Some people are. Some people are so frazzled by the experience that the last thing in the world they want to do is go through the normal routine or even talk to people. They might want to sit by themselves and just think. They might need a moment. So that is the way that I'm approaching this year. Now, some kids are going to turn their cameras on, some aren't. We are on the front lawn right now, and we're just trying to make it through this year.
Yeah.
That's where we're at. Our expectations should be there. We're there to comfort kids the best of our ability. That's what we're here for. Academically, anything we do is as they say it's house money. We're free rolling. Like there's nothing to lose. Like if people learn something, wonderful. If they don't,
Yes.
hey, the house is on fire. Like it's like let's put out the fire, then we'll worry about like what we're gonna do when we get back in there. That's my take on it.
Yeah.
I see everybody nodding and giving hearts and love on this. I think that's huge. I want to add that I've had conversations with parents who've said things like, why didn't the teacher call me and tell me my kid wasn't at school? How come my kid has missed 20 sessions and they're not communicating with me? And so from a parent perspective, they're like, hey, teach, you ain't doing your job. And I respect that deeply because they want that normalcy. And so again, like I hear what you're saying, like this is not best practice year. It's not even close. It's a survival year, right? But how then do we manage the varying expectations of all of the stakeholders now?
Mm. We're taking it as case by case. Some kids have their cameras on and I know they can. So I talk to them, but there are kids that have no furniture in their homes and that's why their cameras is off. I have kids who are taking care of their younger siblings, like literally changing diapers as I'm teaching to them. And that's why they can't have their cameras on. Yep. So those kids, I understand, like just participate via chat and annotate on the slides as much as you can. But if I know you're at home and I've seen your bedroom before, I know you're just playing video games, so I need you to turn on your camera. So it depends on the case.
Yeah.
What were you going to say, Meredith? Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, I think it's funny that you brought up accountability. That was something that in reflecting about tonight that I had immediately come to, because we're poking holes in all of the structures that systems have been hella tied to for forever. Like what are the things that are hardest now? Attendance, like you said, attendance, email, grades, like all these things that are like, but how do we know John was there? How do we know Diana was there? How are you taking attendance? And what are teachers worrying about? What's our group chat blowing up about on Teams and text messages within colleagues? Like Bobby, you're saying your phone is blowing up. Like, is your internet working? I mean, it's like, how are you taking attendance? If Diana did her daily assignment, but she wasn't on the Zoom, but she got everything done, how am I coding? We have a culture of fear in education that we're going to get in trouble, that we're going to get called out. And so then we police kids accordingly. And I don't use the verb police lightly. We are making sure that they are compliant first and engagement second, but we're ignoring like that compliance and all of those structures are also what fuel parents to say, for in a hybrid like us, Elicia just needs to come back in person. She needs structure. The in-person is not any different. They're getting the same lesson plan, girl. And that's basically what I was like, oh no, it's super boring. Like, don't come back. And kids were surprised. And I felt badly that we had communicated that poorly, because they're sitting there like on their computer doing the same lesson. And kids are going, I could have done this at home and been done by 11. Right. But school wants to give you a bell schedule, wants to give you grades, wants me to check in on you. And now we're realizing a lot of kids are engaging, and I've never seen them.
Yeah. You know, I think I'm a department chair, and I have 15 members in my department. So I'm having lots of conversations about all of this. And in fact, even just today, a lot of it was all the demands that are being placed on us, making phone calls, sending emails to kids who are missing in action, sending emails to parents about failing grades. You know, that when am I supposed to make these phone calls? When am I supposed to make these emails? Am I calling enough? Am I making enough emails? And the system records what you're doing too. So there's kind of a big brother watching sense. And, you know, and Elicia, you ask about boundaries. And this is what I say to myself and to the teachers in my department every day. You are a professional, and you're a good professional educator. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here doing this work together with us. Number one. Number two, you've got your own stresses and strains. I know that you're going to show up today and do all those things that are being asked of you as best you can. You won't finish. When the time to go home comes, go home. Turn off the school computer. Don't answer remind. Go home and tend to yourself and tend to your family. Go exercise, go for a walk, take a nap, do whatever it is that you need to do. And when you come back tomorrow, all this stuff's going to still be here. And you're going to pick up where you left off, and you're going to be a professional, and you're going to do the things that you can, and you're going to do the best you can. I mean, everything that Meredith just said, school has attempted for good and for ill to structure life for millions of kids. And it's still asking us to do that in ways that we can't necessarily do it. The structure is much more tentative. It's ethereal. It's ethereal structure. And all we can do is show up and invite. We can't show up and demand. If 70% of my kids are at home, this occurred to me just recently, and I just started it the last couple of days. I'm teaching 3 sections of Latin 1. I've never physically met 70% of these kids. I've never physically seen them face to face, and seeing them through the screen doesn't count. I ran into a kid in the grocery store the other day. I mean, two heads taller than me. He said, Dr. Patrick. And I turned and I said, we both had masks on. I said, tell me your name. He told me his name. And I said, oh my goodness, I've only ever seen you on through the screen. I didn't recognize you. And we had this little conversation, which was wonderful. But what dawned on me a few days ago is this: they don't know me either. I need to tell them some stories, and I need to tell them some personal stories in English about me every day. Okay, so today it was about how I grew up in the country, and my grandmother, we had this huge garden, and she always went to the garden with a pistol in her pocket. I need to tell them some stories. And
that was me, sorry.
Okay. And my grandmother, who was this wonderful, generous, loving heart, would go to pick vegetables in the garden with a pistol in her pocket, because we lived at the bottom of Rattlesnake Mountain. And it took me 30 seconds to tell the story, but they now know something about me that they would never have known before. I told them in English, then we went right back to the Latin story. I mean, I don't know what else to do. None of us know what to do. We're making this stuff up every day, but we're good at what we do, so make the stuff up well.
I just want to take a deep breath. Y'all know I love doing some brain breaths that I learned from Megan Hayes. So let's do a hug breath, because we all wanted a department head like Bob, right? So cross your arms, breathe in and lift your elbows up. We are professionals, you guys. We know what we're doing, and it is ugly. I noticed that Diana just commented, well, why don't you just speak for yourself, Diana?
I guess I'm more of a chat person. I'm like the students. I communicate better via chat. I was agreeing with what Robert was saying, that yes, I have been using more English this semester, but I feel like it's necessary for me to make those connections with those kids. You know, I don't have like all the, I can't do all this comprehensible thing that I can do in my classroom when I'm face to face. I'm like, hey, good morning. I get really close to the camera. How's your day going? Who is that? Who is that? Oh my gosh. I love it. I love it. We have the same stuffed animal and that's it. And it just, and it helps. Those little comments right like that in English goes a long way. They'll remember those things. So like Bob said, yes, if they show up, we engage with them. I think Meredith, or I can't remember who said it, but, and if they learn something, that's great. But we're here to support them first. Let's not forget a lot of people have lost their jobs.
True.
Long way, they'll remember those things. So
I
like
think too.
Bob said, yes. if
Oh,
they
we're
show
double.
up,
Diana, 2 times. I was like, Diana's mouth's not moving. I think too, the other thing is,
support them first.
it's really not easy, but it's a little bit easier under pre-COVID. Like it feels like 10 years ago, February, like pre-COVID circumstances, like, it was a lot easier to say, John, you're walking into my classroom, you're going to greet me and da-da-da-da-da, and also have the cultural values that you bring with you, be it, you know, like if you're someplace else, ethnically, racially, whatever, to impose those in your classroom, because I'm like, you walk in, you say hi, we're a guest in their house now. You know, and it's like, we got to be real careful about what we say, which I was telling you earlier. Whoops, kind of screwed that up. And, you know, just different things where I'll realize, like you said, Dana, I'm just like, I'm trolling kids in Go Formative. I'm dropping gifts that are like TikTok. They're like Judge Judy because they're not like working in the document. I'm like, hello, what are you doing? And then I'm like, I'm just kidding. And I realize I am echoing in somebody's living room, just being like ridiculous. And also, like you said, totally not 90-10, 10-90. Like it's mostly English. And then like, oh yeah, the Spanish, hasta luego. And then we move on. Like, but we're not in charge anymore. And I think for a lot of teachers, that's really hard to go, but and all those things you took personally, you can't take personal anymore because it's none of your business why it's not getting done necessarily. Fault responsibility. We feel like it's our fault that they didn't do X, so 0. And it's not. Like it's our responsibility to follow up, but it's also theirs to do the things. And so it's really hard to juggle that when before we took both responsibility, fault, all the work, and you know, they had us to linger over them in the classroom and go, come on, John, wake up. Da-da-da. It's really hard for some people now to get to stay in those habits.
But I also, sorry,
go ahead.
I want to go ahead. I'm going to read some comments because we have a ton. So you talk, I'm going to read.
Oh, I was just going to say in response to Meredith that with that, you know, responsibility is the ability to respond to the current circumstance. On the student side, what I find myself, the conversation I find myself having, especially with kids who are missing in action, when I finally get them on a telephone call or a Zoom conference, is to say, you know, here's what I would like for you to do. Tell me what of these things can you do? Because that's the ability to respond. Can you, I've just outlined 3 things. Can you do those 3 things? No. Can you do 2 of those things? No. Can you do 1 of those things? Yes. Which one of those things can you do? And, you know, I think in a traditional setting, somebody might say, oh, that's just coddling laziness, which is a despicable thing to say anytime, in my opinion. But this is negotiating the ability to respond. And, you know, when I see, I got one of my star kids in Latin 1, every once in a while, I mean, he's just so on it. Spanish is his first language, English is his second language, and he is tearing Latin up. And every once in a while, a 3-year-old toddles into the room requiring something from him. And it dawns on me, he's at home taking care of a baby sister while he's tearing Latin up. And another kid is showing up on the screen in his jammies. You know, I don't know who's not home with, nobody's at home with him. Those realities come on screen too. And it just sets me back for a minute to go, whoa, there's a sense in which these kids are kind of super people, you know, they're doing more than they've ever done in some respects.
Oh yeah.
I think that we underestimate the wherewithal that it takes for a kid to join an online meeting. Like the number of small steps that it takes. I think we talk about, you know, there's kids who I see in the comments, you know, there's kids who are coming in from homeless shelters. They're coming in. And I worry a lot about the narrative of like, oh, it's so sad because what they don't have, without looking at what they do have and how we can recognize their context. Okay,
Yeah.
maybe they can't do all 3 of those assignments, but oh my gosh, they are here.
Yeah.
How amazing is that they are showing up? And if they're not showing up, there might be a problem that we should show love and concern about,
Yes.
or recognize, as John said, that we are dealing with a collective trauma. I mean, this is terrifying and scary, and we're all living with it in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
I have kids that miss math and English, but they come to my class in the middle of the day. I know because the attendance office is always calling me like, and I'm like, no, they were in my class. I don't know what happened to the other 2 classes, but they were definitely in mine. So they come to my class because they know this is the class where I, you know, actually take my time to talk to them. And, you know, all the sentences are about a student that I interview. So I'm doing a lot of those little connections. And that's important. And yes, they're probably not doing any of the assignments, but they're coming to class.
But they're showing up. And are the assignments the most important thing?
No.
Oh.
So then that leads me to my next question. We know they're not the most important thing, and yet we're being observed by admins. We are being observed by parents because now our audience is much wider, and we are, right, terrifyingly wide, and we still have to play school, for lack of a better word, right? Even though, as you so eloquently put it, Meredith, school conspires against learning. All the, like, if we didn't have to do the things that we had to do as teachers, we would be amazing teachers. And we're already a pretty great group of teachers. And for teachers who are watching, I want to acknowledge you are here on your free time. Thank you. I feel incredibly honored that you care enough about your profession to spend time with us, because this is a big deal that you are spending your very valuable time here. So thank you. But how do we have these conversations with parents and administrators about leading with love?
Oh, I could throw in on that one real quick. I'm sorry, Bob.
No, I just wanted to repeat that last piece about administrators.
Oh, how do we have these conversations with administrators about engagement, and do the kids really need to be doing that assignment if they're showing up and that sort of thing?
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, I have a response to that one. So I think this is the way I tend to put it. Don't get fired. That's my big advice, is don't get fired. So when it comes to deciding how you deal with these situations, like, you know, like quote unquote accountability, all these other things like that, think about what it is you actually have to do. The things that actually will determine whether or not you have a job, and what it is that you can really get away with not doing. Like, for example, is there an administrator who's coming into like your Google Classroom and being like, okay, I've noticed you've assigned all these things. Where's the evidence that there was X number of questions and that they were graded for whether they were correct or incorrect, accuracy, and is someone actually doing that? There you go, trash. See, that's it. So exactly. So like, if that's not happening, what that says to me is you're being given the freedom to make these decisions.
Yeah.
Right. So if you have to have 10 grades in the grade book, that doesn't mean you have to have 10 actual like assignments that kids like, you know, like, well, I had to do this and answer this number of questions. It could be simply like, all right, we're going to play a GIM kit today. And if you participate in the GIM kit, and maybe even if you don't, I mean, do we really care? I mean, it's just like you click the little button in Google Classroom that says did it. That's something that's in there. Or it's like, we're gonna have a conversation about X. Did we have that conversation? Yeah, it's a little button that's in there. like if no one is I mean, I'm fortunate enough to be in a situation where like I really do have a tremendous amount of administrative support that is very much aligned with what I'm doing, but that's not been the case for the overall majority of my career. And I know it's not the case for a lot of people. Think about it on those terms. If no one is coming into like your grade book and saying, I need to see this evidence of this, X kids need to fail, X kids need to do that, I wouldn't even bring up the conversation. It's easier to ask for forgiveness than it is for permission. I wouldn't even bring it up. Do what you do and wait till somebody says something to you and then say, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't realize. That's my advice on that one.
Well, and who's lining, not to be crass, but who's lining up for our jobs? Like, part of me, like, you said, like, and I don't mean that because I think like teacher retention is super important. And like, we know that. And so y'all know that I care a lot, but like, yeah, like you said, John, I literally see people who have the like colleague, and I love where I am. I have a lot of support, beautiful, love. But I see people, thank goodness, not my own department, who have like the rest of the semester already like recorded and planned because it's just plug and play. Not because they're super efficient. I mean, that's part of it. But they're also just like, yeah, I'm not super duper engaging a ton, whatever. And I'm like, well, I'm not doing that. You know, like that, like at least I'm not, you know, and you don't like to be comparative. But I also look at it this way. There's that saying of like, you know, the American dream is a pyramid scheme, and we're talking about equity, and to a degree, all of these school systems also are a bit of a pyramid scheme. You've got to, like you said, John, you got to like hit the buttons, you got to win the things. And so for our kids who don't have access, we also have to put ourselves, for all of them, but for our kids who have like the myriad of situations we've cited, we also have to put ourselves in their shoes, because if we're trying to be extra 100% every day, like, okay, we have 2 Nearpods, 6 ed puzzles, no, the second we get those HR videos, I'm like, skip the video, go to the quiz. Like, I am the kids. And guess who turns in the HR videos extra late? Still me. Like, I skipped the quiz, I failed the quiz. Thank you. John is also a terrible person like I am. No, I'm kidding. Yeah. I get a 40 because I want to see the questions. I want to see which ones I got wrong. And then I'm like, oh, anaphylaxis. Who knew? Okay, don't give a some water. Whatever. Then I go back and I take it. I still don't pass it. I get like a 60, but I get one more right. And so if we're so worried about equitability seems like a word. If we're so worried about equitably, you know, making things, but we're not making things retakeable, redoable, some deadlines, flexible, like John said, like you're not going to step on any major toes, like you're not going to put yourself in trouble, but you can zhuzh it a little bit. Why are we not doing that? Because on a faculty meeting, the second they put us in breakout rooms, I leave the meeting. So I don't use a lot of breakout rooms with my kids because I'm like, that sounds like the 7th circle of hell. I'm sorry. No. Hard pass.
Look. I mean, Meredith asked the question, and I want to just sort of press it as an imperative. If we can find an ounce of energy to do this, this is the moment to break everything open. Break open assessment, break open what you think of as some sort of a curriculum calendar. I've said from day one, when we went back to my department, and then I said it to our administrators, forget curriculum calendar. We're just looking for, did you make some progress? Are you a little bit further along than you were yesterday? Outstanding. Grading and assessing and teaching and learning is about making some progress, whatever that is, and we're going to take that. But when it comes to assess, and John's already given some examples. Meredith just pressed the question. Today, how can I elicit some work between us that is notable? And then I just go to my grade book and start putting grades in. You know, the GIM kit, it's a great relief for the teacher. If you've created a GIM kit, you've done your work, you've put together in it the kinds of things that you and students have been working on. Now they play this game, which they tend to enjoy, and it creates a percentage. Hey, you got a 96 on that. That's going in my grade book. You got a 76 on that. Want to try again? Great, do it again. Oh, now it's a 93. I'm putting that in my grade book. Why not do that? Why not do that? We've never had the freedom to sort of break these things open. And I think, in fact, I kind of hope that when this is all over, we don't ever dare think about going back to the way we used to do things. Our district today announced that district assessments are called off for the rest of the year. Now, that's great.
That's awesome.
Why did it take until November to make that decision? But that's great. It's great.
Any progress is good progress. Okay,
Yes.
I have another, perhaps more sticky question for you guys. One of the things that's been circling in my brain is that educators sometimes hold different kids, and again, I don't like this word accountable, differently because of perceived differences, and this often negatively affects students of color. So the idea of, well, I'm not going to hold you to as such a high standard because you're a Black kid, and maybe I know a little bit about your home circumstance, so I'm not going to reach out or expect you to do the same things as I'm going to expect this other kid to do. And that's really, that's been sticking with me a lot, because if we are not going out and seeking out all of our students at the same because of perceived or real circumstantial differences, are we then leaving students behind?
I would say what's interesting, and I'm going to get stickier. So I'm going to stick on the sticky fly paper here. What's interesting is I think you have to reflect on when we said earlier that we have, in the chat, I'm over here, like you can see my NASA setup in my 17th monitor, over here. When we've said in the chat, and we literally said, that we have kids in all these different circumstances, I think you have to think who you picture when we as teachers say things like, I have kids who are homeless. I have kids who are in shelters. I have kids who have shared devices. And if you're exploring your own bias and going, oh yeah, I just kind of assumed it was, Jimmy and Johnny and not, whatever. I think you have to look at that. And a conversation that's been swirling around at our school, because we are, about 30% Asian, is our teachers giving white kids and Asian kids more chances and going like, oh, no problem, I can open that up for you. It's 2 clicks. But if the student's not white or Asian or Hispanic and our Black students, are they going like, it was due a week ago, and that kind of thing. And so how are the deadlines working? Like John was saying, how do you not get fired? That's a very real conversation for a lot of people. I'm in a school whose demographic is rapidly changing, and a lot of people have been there a long time, and that's very uncomfortable for them to go, oh, well, I just assumed your internet was down. But to another student go, he just doesn't care. And I think that's, to me, that's what you're kind of referring to.
That is exactly it. Thank you.
Yeah.
I mean, I see 2 different angles on this. One is sort of where you were coming from, Elicia, and it's like, so I don't want to talk about specific students because that's too revealing, but we have a significant number of special ed students in our Latin program, and we're very proud of that. It's easy. I think it's easy from a traditional perspective. And look, at 31 years, I can say I've been a traditional teacher for much of that time, right? So I'm not banging on anything that I haven't done myself. You look at certain students, well, he or she is special ed, so I'm going to go easier or lighter on them. What we've tried to do is to take all of the accommodations that we've ever been asked to make and just make those the rules for the whole classroom. So we set up a room so that everybody has preferential seating. Everybody has extra time. No, seriously, everybody has extra time on an assessment because we make the assessment shorter. That's how you do it. You don't have to find 30 minutes after school. You just make the freaking assessment shorter. And then everybody's got extra time. Whatever accommodations have been asked for somebody, everybody gets. So that's one way of addressing that. And then, like if I do have a student who has special needs and is African American, and he has certain quirks that could easily undo a teacher who wants everything to be in the box. And today, in the middle of a story, he was understanding like this and coming through in ways that nobody else in the room was. And it was just like, dude, you are so on this. Dude, why weren't you allowing him to be on this? Why was it surprising to me? So that's part. and I'm talking too much, but the other piece of this very quickly is something I learned from Universal Design for Learning. Every student will will come up on an obstacle, and it's just my job to help them find a way around it or over it. You know, regardless of their circumstances, their status, their skin tone, their gender. When they reach an obstacle, it's just my job to help them around it. And that's not something I made up. It's something I learned from UDL. And I think that addresses some of these equity issues.
I have a follow-up question for you, Bob. You just described a student where a moment where you recognized that your student was understanding. What specifically were you doing and that student doing in that moment so that you knew? Like, was it chatting? Was it nodding? Was it?
Yeah, we were in the middle of a dictatio, a dictation, okay? And we were using it as a pre-reading exercise. Tomorrow we're gonna read a story, and we were using some select sentences from the story in a dictatio. So kind of a boring activity, to be honest, but dictatios are really effective. They're not very sexy, but they're very effective. And so we were in the middle of a sentence that everybody was sort of struggling to make sense of, and he just blurted it out. And this happened like twice in a row, and it was like, yes. I couldn't even tell that he was paying attention a couple of times, but he clearly was, in a way that I didn't recognize paying attention. So what does paying attention look like?
Oh, that is a really, really, really hot issue, and something that I've been working so hard to reframe my own bias about, because I know that I come into the classroom with expectations. And also, I've been doing some reading by an author named Rich Milner the Fourth, I think. It's an incredible book, and he talks about how there's a lot of positivity in teaching students how to behave, how to play school, and therefore how to work within the culture of power. And that is a very valuable skill. And so on one hand, I'm like, yeah, I totally do that. And on the other hand, I'm like, yeah, I'm making it accessible for all my kids, but am I? And where's that line? Like, I think it's a conversation I've been having with myself a lot in looking at my own practice, to say, am I supporting or am I getting in the way of student learning?
That's it.
Well, and are the super subtle things that aren't subtle to us getting in the way? Because how is your LMS set up? You know, if your Canvas is like clicking 17 different places to find today's assignment, and it's not consistent with anybody else, our kids who have a shared device, i.e. nearly all of them, like who's got the luxury to be like, my 4 siblings and I all have our own computers, like very few, are like, it's taking them 20 minutes just to find stuff and read your mind. You know, it's like bad comprehension questions, read my mind, kids, and also be, you know, advanced low like I am, like whatever. So like, it's the same thing. Like they've got to go, well, she probably put it here. And if all of that's not equitable, I see organization as an equity issue as well, because not only how are your materials comprehensible, how are you representing people, how are you framing people, whose stories are you telling, but also where are you putting stuff? Because if it's like, well, I think it should be here, that doesn't mean they can't. I've got kids doing all their classes. This is going to be like, I'm dying to see your faces. I've got kids who are doing their entire schedule, their whole day, on a shared family gaming console, because it's the only internet device in the house. And so they are doing every class on a controller. Short answer, essays, like all the AP classes, math problems, and teachers are taking off points for show your work because they can't show their work with like a PlayStation controller. And they've only got it for like an hour and a half. If you've got an hour and a half and your teacher's not saying like what Bob was saying and going, listen, you can't do all 4 assignments this week. I'm only taking your highest score. So do 1 and do it like as many times you need. And like, we'll figure it out. Like the 1 can be a gim kit. Here you go. Have a nice day. Because maybe they can do that on the phone if they have a phone. But kids are really struggling, and parents think that school is supposed to be what it's always been because they see their child struggling. And it's really hard for them to make sense of what our role is, what their kids' role is, but also motivation, like all these different things. Ugh.
Yeah.
Can I kick it on something to add on to some of that? I think that we should take this opportunity to, I think, get back to one fundamental concept what I think answers a lot of these issues and a lot of these questions. Get back to the concept of the fact that we are teachers. Our job is to teach people things that they don't know. We are not bosses who are just assigning deadlines. We're not like delusional people just creating our own little like cultish world and then it's hoping and it's forcing people to just conform to what we want and then just rewarding or punishing them for not doing whatever arbitrary thing we've asked them to do. We're teachers. Like if I keep using these examples all the time because I think we just forget the fundamentals of this. Like again, if I show up to dance class, like say I want to learn how to salsa dance, the expectation isn't that someone's going to say like, all right, I assign you salsa dancing and then come back and salsa dance. And then you'll either be punished or rewarded for how well you salsa dance. And then
Like
everything's
Dancing with the Stars, not only salsa dance, but like Dancing with the Stars. Make sure it's
Yes.
that quality.
exactly,
Good.
exactly. That's what it is. And like, we're teachers. Like the point isn't to like say like, well, I assigned this and then the good kids hand it in and then the bad kids don't. And then I got to call them and I have to say, why aren't you handing in this? Why aren't you doing this? I spent the first like 6 years of my teaching career in those meetings about students as a middle school teacher. And after like 6 years of this, like I reached the point where I was like, I went to a meeting and said one time and said like, all right, watch this. They're about to put a list of kids' names on the board. Every single one of them is going to be black and or special ed. Watch. And then I was like, I was never wrong. Never wrong. Every single time was just like, we got to talk about our black student who won't do this, and our special ed student, they have an executive functioning disability. That doesn't mean they can't do this. This kid's dad just got murdered, but that was like yesterday. I don't understand why they haven't turned in my assignment. I gave them an extra 2 hours. They were just too busy on social media. Like everything is about like our own compulsions. And we've let school become nothing but just how can you satisfy the compulsions of a controlling adult, as opposed to the fact that this person is here to teach you stuff, right? And it's going to look different for everybody. We have to surrender control of these things to make things work. Progress is going to look different for everybody. Growth is going to look different for everybody. Everyone is different. We don't just run the same script over and over again and then expect people to kind of say their lines. What we do is supposed to change for the people who are in the room. And I think if we rediscover that, then we won't be spending time making like 70 virtual classrooms and like a virtual whatever have you with like 35 links to get to another 35 links that bring you to like an interactive whatever have you on like 7 different tech platforms. But the kids just like, just talk to me. And like give me like just talk to me and like I got plenty of beautiful stuff. I'll play a game. I'll play like a video game later. I'll watch like a TikTok video later. Just like give me a page that says what I'm supposed to do when I click on it and talk to me for a little bit. That's my take. We got to get back to what we actually are instead of trying to play like these weird like hyper controlling police officers. Like I don't know what we're doing.
And
that's my rant.
Your lesson plan can't be like finding your lesson plan shouldn't be like a breakout room. You know, like like not okay.
I really I want to honor your time. Thank you all for being here, but I do have one last question that I'd like to ask you sort of speed round wise. All right. And the question is, how do you know when your students are paying attention and engaging? What does that actually look like for you?
Mm-hmm. I'll go. I don't. So a lot of trust and keep plugging away.
Yeah, I was just going to say that it's not the immediate look on the face that we've all trained each other in CI workshops to look for, because I don't have that anymore. It bubbles up over time in different ways, and it frequently surprises me, and I have to wait for it.
A lot of waiting time. Yes, you ask a question, you just wait, and someone would answer the chat. That's how, for me, the chat, they're using the chat a lot. 3 or 4 kids in a class of 30 will constantly unmute themselves and talk, but that's not the majority. But a lot of them will annotate slides with me, would do the activities in the breakout rooms. but they communicate a lot with me via chat.
Mhm.
That's how I know they're paying attention. The polls, I use the polls a lot. When we're voting for certain, do you like apples? Do you like grapes? And we vote on those. Then I see who's participating. And I also know exactly who those 3 students are in every period that turn on the Zoom and then they go away and they're not present. But the vast majority are participating and they're engaging with me one way or the other. Also, a lot of nodding, a lot of laughing when I say something funny, a lot of this. A lot of this, thumbs up, thumbs down. So that's how I know. And some kids, they're not participating for X or Y reason. And it is what it is.
Yeah, I guess for me, it's very similar to what you just said. It's asking questions in the like via poll, facial expressions for kids who have their cameras on, things in the chat for the kids who like the chat. But the thing I come back to with this a lot is I don't know, really. Like sometimes I know, sometimes I don't. But anytime someone says this to you, and anytime, it's my last thing. Anytime someone goes and says like, well, I don't know if my kids are paying attention, not paying attention. They need to turn those cameras on because they're not paying attention. Every time you get that rant going, because we've all seen that we've all seen that before, right? It's like, go to a faculty meeting, go to a faculty like Zoom meeting. The cameras are off. We are not paying attention. I'm playing games on my phone, and we're judging kids.
I was cooking on my last meeting, by the way. I was cooking.
Thank you. We're texting each other. We're texting each other. In
Yeah, we
meetings.
are.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You see that?
She's so out of control. Like that's what we're doing.
Does he know that his mic is still on? Did you hear that? I mean,
Right. But is
listen.
it okay to ask them to not do it? I mean,
Yeah.
I ask, like, I want you to be here with me so that we
Yeah.
can have some fun. Like,
Sure.
I thank them. I thank everybody. Thank you so much for replying in chat. Thank you so much for having your camera. I'm constantly thanking them for every single little thing they do. Thank you so much for, yes, I agree with you. I have a little, this is for my French class, I have a little rejoinders that I put, oh yes, I agree. And but constantly just thanking them for being there. First of all, for being there, because they do not need to, they don't have to technically. Thank you for being there. Thank you for having your cameras on. That's the first thing I say. Thank you so much for having your cameras on. And the people who don't have their cameras on, oh, thank you so much for replying and participating via chat.
Yep. One of the things
sorry.
Now, this is just a little simple thing, but it delights me every time that it happens. You know how, like in a live class, we might ask students, okay, we've just read this thing. Show me on your hands 1 through 5 how well you understood that. 1 means I didn't get it. 5 means I totally got it. Somewhere in between, and they all hold up, the fingers. Well, so the kids in the room can do that. The kids at home blast the chat full of numbers, and it's like, oh, they were really with me, and it takes like 10 seconds. They love to do it, and I love to see it. It's a simple thing.
With the annotation,
go ahead,
if you hide names of annotators, my students annotate the slide, let me know what you understand, what words you're confused with. When you hide, I think it's called hide names of annotators, a lot more of them participate. That's another way I know that they're engaged with their reading.
Love that.
Oh.
I was gonna say my friend Angela in Forsyth does waterfall too in the chat so that kids don't feel weird about if her chat is public. Mine's not, because my Zoom is a tomb, so I don't do these things. These sound like amazing idea. I'm like, good for you. No, no. In the chat, she does. She'll ask a question, and then same thing. She'll say like, no, da 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 da. And but she does waterfall where she's like, okay, answer. Hold on to it. Don't hit enter. And then like find me 3 words. Tell me 3 words that you didn't understand, like you just said, Dana, or like 3 words that you know for sure that made you feel better about this text. Don't hit enter, and then we're gonna hit enter on 3, 2, 1, send, and then everyone's like and just trickles through, and nobody's like, oh, Bob's always first, Meredith's always last, like whatever. It just waterfalls through. And then she said she usually like farts around with something too. So like they really don't have 3 seconds. They have like 15 seconds, where she's like, okay, so we're just 3, 2, okay, hold on. She lie into the Zoom like we all do, whatever. And then she's counting down, and then she lets them go. And she says she gets a lot of engagement that way.
I love
I
that.
love that.
Yeah.
Oh, stolen.
I feel like there's there's some big themes that I just want to finish up, and that's like we are leading with kindness and a recognition that our world is crazy pants. We know our kids, right? Like we're getting to know them as best we can, but recognizing that we know them and being patient with the process and trusting them that if they're here, they're going to engage, whether it looks the same or not, whether it looks like we expect it to or not. We're trusting the kids and trusting eventually that language acquisition is going to happen, because it will.
Yeah.
TPR is going well online. Believe it or not, they don't mind doing I thought that was the thing that they would at least want to do, but actually they don't like talking, but TPR, they're okay with that. The ones that have their cameras on, they participate. A lot of TPR. They
So
like it.
TPR, for those of you that don't know, is total physical response, invented by Dr. James Asher, and it's super, super, super fun.
Yeah.
All right, you guys, I want to honor your time, and I know I have a little dinner being made for me, so I want to eat that. I'm very excited because it's been a long day, and I just want to say again, thank you so much for spending time with me and helping all of us work together. If we aren't talking to each other and engaging in these, this is what professional development really looks like. It's not necessarily looking for the best resources, it's engaging with ideas to like push ourselves to be even better. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
What a pleasure.
Thank you so
And
much.
thank you all for spending this time with us. I'm going to go ahead and end